Good morning, everyone. We're very happy to be back. For those of you who know, we were away in India for almost a month, and we got back about a week and a half ago. So we'll share a little later during our service together some news of India and some experiences we had. But let's start now with our reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda. And our topic this week is, We Are Children of the Light. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. It is common for people to perceive themselves according to their present realities. A person in ill health says, I am ill. Few say, I am well. It is my body that is suffering. People in a low income bracket say, I am poor. Only the unusual person will say, though outwardly I live in poverty, inwardly I am wealthy. Thus, when it comes to moral and spiritual development, people commonly identify themselves with their weaknesses and their mistakes. They consider it a sign of humility to say, I am a sinner, though in effect what this means is that they identify themselves with their sinfulness, not with the soul's power to transcend all limitations in God. The great masters, including Jesus Christ, have always emphasized the divine potential of mankind. They encouraged us, they address us as children of light, not of darkness. The Bible, in the Gospel of St. John, chapter 3, makes the point that our true home is not the mud of this earth, but the light of heaven. No man hath ascended up to heaven, it tells us, but him that came down from heaven. This passage continues, even so the Son of Man who is in heaven, emphasizing that Jesus, though he lived on earth, is perceived by the eye of wisdom as conscious, even in human form, of his true reality in heavenly spheres. The way to know God is to live in godly consciousness and not to bewail our imperfection and our distance from God. Jesus said, Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And the Bhagavad Gita states, Seekers of union with the Lord find him dwelling in their own hearts, but those who, lacking wisdom, seek him with impure motives cannot perceive him, however much they struggle to do so. If you want to know God, Paramahansa Yogananda said, live in the thought that you have him already. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning. I want to start by reading from this beautiful prayer poem, collection of prayer poems, Whispers from Eternity. This is, Demand to be fed with thy cosmic rays. I entered my temple of silence, seated with a straight spine. I switched off the dazzling, diverting light of energy animating my sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. I commanded my breath to cease its cleansing work in the body and make no noise. I ordered my heart to suspend its dictatorship over my myriad body cells, forcing them to eat the blood it sends them. I sat still and listened. Then, Mother, I heard the soft approach of thy footsteps. Thou didst come, bearing an overflowing chalice of life-sustaining spiritual rays. Sustain me evermore, O Divine Mother, with thy rays of life-giving light. The heart, cells, brains, and thoughts of this body, thy body, not mine, will waste no longer with decay. Lo, they are now immortal with thy everlasting life. Isn't that beautiful? Well, this is a wonderful and very, very interesting topic, to see ourselves as beings of light and to identify with our higher nature, not our lower nature. As it said in the reading, we tend to identify with that state that we currently perceive ourselves in. I almost made a mistake. I almost said that state where we are now. Where we are now is far, far beyond our perception. But we identify ourselves with what we can see outwardly, what we can perceive through the senses. And because the senses and the concomitant aspect of the mind, the ego, is so limited in its perceptive powers, we see ourselves as very limited, and we see ourselves very, very incorrectly. We are, in fact, infinite. We are, in fact, endless. We're everything that God is, because we are emanations of His. We're the same. As the Master put it, it's like taking a drop of water and you encase that from the sea, or a cup of water. So the endless sea, you take a cup of water and you encase that in a bottle. And you encase that second bottle in yet another bottle, and then finally a third bottle, and it's floating in the sea. And so that cup of water, which is exactly the same as the sea, perceives itself as encased in a bottle. That's the physical body. And its whole world is not the endless sea. Its whole world is that little bottle. So the whole world is our physical world, the world we can perceive with our senses. Well, you break that bottle and it expands, but it still doesn't get into the sea. It expands into a bottle of energy, and that's the astral universe. And we go back and forth from the astral universe to the physical, back and forth, until finally we break forever the delusion that we're beings, physical beings. It's not that we aren't physical beings. It's the delusion that that's all that we are that gets us in trouble. Obviously, we have a physical reality. If we pinch ourselves, we hurt. Problem is, if we pinch our dream self in a dream, our dream self hurts too. So it's a little tricky. As Alan Watts said, the universe is wobbly. And so it's a little tricky about what is reality and what isn't. But we know this much. What we think is reality isn't. I love the bumper sticker that says, "Don't believe everything you think." So that which we think is limiting at this point, by and large. We have to get beyond that. And one way of limiting ourselves, and the subject of today's talk and reading, is that we limit ourselves by seeing ourselves in our most condensed form, or our lower nature. And with a certain kind of twisted pride, we call that humility, and we disparage anybody who doesn't behave the same way. They say that you don't need a top on a cage of rats, if there are many of them, because the others will never let one crawl out. As soon as it tries to crawl out, they pull it back down. And so there is this element in consciousness that as soon as someone tries to move away from confines and limitations, the rest of humanity says, isn't he getting awfully uppity? And, just tries to pull the consciousness back down. People who drink, they want others to drink with them. People who are angry, they go around banging pots and pans and trying to get everybody else angry. We were years ago in visiting friends of ours in Minneapolis, and they were having a peace rally, protest against, I guess it was the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, I don't know, one of those wars. Doesn't matter, there's always one going on. And anyway, they were having a protest against it. Now, of course we should protest against war, especially unrighteous wars. They were doing it by marching up and down the streets, banging on pots and pans. And our friends wanted us to go out and join that. And we said, I think we will help the cause of peace more by being peaceful ourselves rather than going out and getting angry. That's the cause of war. It isn't the end of war. So we preferred to stay and meditate. And they went out and actually, I think we convinced them not to go out and bang on pots and pans and rally. But violence begets violence. It does not beget peace. Peace begets peace. And so what we need to do is we need to emphasize those qualities in ourselves that bring about the movement toward the goal that we're after. And the goal that we're after is expansion. Now let me come back to the image that's being used here, to see ourselves as beings of light. Because if we see ourselves as beings of light, light has a number of very, very interesting qualities that make it a truer way to perceive ourselves than just the limited sense of the ego. For one thing, light is eternal. It's an aspect of God. It's one of the ways that God manifests himself. So one of the eternal aspects of God is a radiation of light. That radiation of light is the cause of all life. Think of life on this earth. Would we have life on this earth if we didn't have the sun to radiate light that creates the energy that we ultimately use to create all life? We have to have that energy radiating in order for life to exist. And so all life is dependent on the sun. For us, inwardly, there's an inner and an outer reality. There is a sun within us also. It's the spiritual eye. And our life depends upon the fact that we have a spiritual eye, that there is a radiation of our true nature, which is God, is always radiating. And so that radiation is there, and that's what sustains us. Now, another aspect of light is that darkness exists not as a reality, but as an absence of light. And so darkness has no reality in and of itself. All it is really the absence of light. And so the human psychology, the human psyche, has no real darkness to it, or the darkness that we have isn't real, isn't ultimately real. It is simply a reduction of the light or an absence of the light that is within us. What this means on a deeper level is that we are, in our very nature, we are children of light. We are emanations of God. We are the same substance of God. It is only the absence of being able to perceive that makes us feel limited. This is very important as we advance spiritually, because what it means is that as we advance spiritually, we don't have to learn. It isn't complicated. We don't have to add things to our nature in order to become spiritual. All we have to do is eliminate those delusions and see ourselves as we truly are. So we do not have we aren't born into evil. We are not in our essence evil and need somehow to redeem ourselves by becoming less evil or having a blessing that makes us unevil. We are not children of darkness. We are not evil in our essential nature. We are children of light. We are aspects of God. And so all we have to do is remove those delusive thoughts that keep us thinking in a diminished way. And as we do that, that's the whole process of meditation. It's the whole process of spiritual growth. All spiritual, the whole of every spiritual path is ultimately to get rid of the ego being seeing ourselves in limited ways. We see ourselves, as it said in this reading, in the current conditions that we find ourselves. But that's not who we are. It's not at all who we are. Yogananda said, I see you all as beings of light. You have no idea how beautiful you are. That's what he said to his disciples. He was saying that to us. I see you all as beings of light. You have no idea how beautiful you are. So as we begin to see ourselves more and more as beings of light, we begin to act and perceive ourselves in that way. It's very important how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive others also, which I'll come to in a moment. But what our aspirations are, what our self-perception is, to a large extent determines what we think we are. So even if we aren't happy, we should perceive ourselves as happy. Now there'll be some that say, oh, that's just deluding yourself. Well, you can think that way, or you can think as Yogananda did. He said, if you aren't smiling, push the corners of your mouth up until you are. So if you aren't happy, act happy. And that will release the positive flow of energy that will create the condition of happiness. Unhappiness is not a reality. It is simply a diminution of our own true being. And so it isn't false to act happy if you're not feeling happy. It's false to act unhappy if you're feeling unhappy. Yeah, you got it, didn't you? Sometimes those double twisters you aren't quite sure. But to act unhappy when you're feeling unhappy is simply to perpetuate delusion. It isn't to be real, get real. It's to get unreal. And so we want to perceive ourselves, and we want to keep identifying with the light. Now, light has some interesting qualities. If we perceive ourselves and identify with the light of our well-being, there are some qualities that begin to manifest in us. For one thing, light is naturally in and of itself expansive. If it were night here, and you took a single match and you lit it, the rays from that single match would go out and it would expand until it touched every molecule of space in this whole building. And it would go out beyond that through the windows. So light naturally wants to expand, but we could shut that light off by closing off the windows and putting up, as they did during World War II, putting up the kind of curtains over the windows so no light could shine out. But in and of its nature, light wants to expand, and it will expand infinitely as long as we don't stop it. Our true nature is beings of light. Our true nature is to want to expand and expand and expand unless it gets stopped. What stops it? Our self-perception of being limited. That's why Christ says in the Bible, place not thy light under a bushel, but let it expand before all men. He wasn't saying be proud, go out and show them how great you are. he was saying, let your true nature expand. Because when everybody begins to expand that way, light adds to light, and the whole universe, the whole world becomes filled with light. Oh, children of light, wake up. Experience yourself as that. Another aspect of light is that it's eternal and it's ageless. You know, those beautiful, beautiful photos that we see from the Hubble Space Telescope, just gloriously beautiful. You know how old the light is that they're capturing? Several billion years old. It hasn't diminished at all in its beauty. When we hide our light under a bushel, then we begin to fear age, the aging process. Oh, don't let me get old. Don't let me have wrinkles. Don't let me lose my hair. Don't let me, and we get all worried about that. The ultimate fear comes from the fear of death, because we think that when we die, we actually die. I mean, how dumb is that? There's a wonderful story about this disciple of Yogananda's who was Swiss, I believe. At any rate, he read autobiography just a week before Yogananda's passing. And so he was getting ready to come to America. Then he heard the fact that Yogananda had passed away. And some months later, a wonderful yogi from India, Ram Dass, an Indian Ram Dass, not the American one, was visiting on a lecture tour and was visiting Switzerland. And this man went to several of his lectures and was very, very taken with him. And he went to him after one of these lectures and he said, I would like to be your disciple. And Ram Dass looked at him and he said, oh no, Yogananda's your guru. And this man said, but Yogananda's dead. And Ram Dass said, no, Yogananda's alive, you're dead. And so it is that light doesn't die. Light goes on perpetually. That emanation that we're seeing is billions of years old. And how long will it go on? It'll go on forever, as long as until God withdraws the outer manifestation of this universe back into himself, called the night of Brahma and the day of Brahma. God emanates out, and when he emanates that energy out, it is there perpetually until he withdraws it back into himself. And then it doesn't die, because it's all God anyway. Everything is God. So perceiving ourselves as light makes us ageless, makes us infinitely expansive. But there's another aspect to it, and that's that perceiving ourselves as light begins to allow us to perceive others as light. Think what this world would be like if we all perceived each other as beings of light. It's the littleness, the contractive aspect of human nature that wants to limit and wants to differentiate. And as long as we are locked in our ego, then we're locked in this absurd game of trying to make our ego seem better than other egos. As long as there's separation, then there's competition in that separation. And pretty soon, my religion is the right religion, your religion is the wrong religion. If you don't believe my religion, then I'm going to have to kill you so that I prove that my religion is right. That seems like a good strategy. Well, there are a lot of people practicing it. You know, my country is right, your country is wrong. My way is right, your way is wrong. My political party is right, your political party is wrong. We might think it's absurd, but they're out there protesting today, right as we speak. Devi and I, one time, we came we were on a pilgrimage to Israel, and we came on a bus, and it happened to be on a Saturday, which is the Sabbath. And so coming into Jerusalem, we were greeted by people throwing rocks at the bus because you weren't supposed to be in a motor vehicle on the Sabbath day. Now, that's a good way to celebrate the Sabbath. That makes a lot of sense, stoning people who don't believe the way that you believe. So this contractive sense of ego, as we contract, then because of the very nature of delusion of it, then we have to try to say, I'm right and you're wrong, in order somehow to bolster ourselves. Just let's get rid of all of that. If we begin to see ourselves as light, all of those differences just melt away. Then we begin to see everybody else as light also. As we begin to live in such a way that we enhance the light in each other, it changes society. Devi and I had a beautiful experience when we started the ashram in San Francisco. We had quite a lot of people. It was a huge house, and we had about 30 people living with us. And one of the people who came and lived with us said a very beautiful thing. He said, you know, I've always felt that I had a lot to give, but until I found Ananda, nobody seemed to want it. And he was one of those people that was a little bit shy, a little bit socially awkward, you know. You've all met them. Probably you've all been them. But, you know, a little bit awkward, and because of that, society pushes away and says, I don't want what you have to offer. If we can turn that around and say to each other, I would love to have what you have to offer. Please give it. Please offer it. Let's see each other in the highest way, not the lowest way. Don't diminish. When you have thoughts of negativity toward another person, those thoughts diminish you. They shrink you, and they make you unhappy. They also have effects on that other person. I remember years ago I was playing doubles in racquetball. And so in doubles you have 4 players, 2 on each team. And my partner kept missing these shots, easy shots. And I kept, come on, you can do better than that. But, you know, I was trying to cheer him on, but inwardly I was kind of, that idiot. He just, can't he do anything right? Can't he make the simplest shot? And so it went on. And then I caught myself, because we've had these teachings. We just have to catch ourselves and apply them. And I thought, now that's not doing him any good. And it surely isn't making me happier. So I stopped thinking that way, and I started thinking of him positively. You know what happened? He started making the shots. Now that's a wonderful kind of object lesson for us. As we think about others as being capable and intelligent and healthy and all the things that we want them to be, then they start becoming that. Do unto thy neighbor as you would have thy neighbor do unto you. Think of thy neighbor as you would have thy neighbor think of you. As we do that, then everything begins to have a kind of a reinforcement feedback mechanism that helps us grow stronger and stronger. That's one of the great mysteries of why Ananda communities are as harmonious and as beautiful as they are. Because as we encourage each other in an upward direction, then we actually become that. There was a famous experiment in a school many years ago where it was, I think, a sociology class, but they were studying, I think, Nazism, and the students were asking, how could people behave that way toward another group of people? The teacher did an experiment. He told the class that for the next 2 weeks, we're going to treat everybody that has blue eyes as if they're stupid, incapable, unwanted, and just the same way the Nazis treated the Jews. Anybody that has blue eyes, we're going to treat them that way. Think of them that way. Act that way. Talk to them that way. You know what happened? 2 things. One, very quickly those students started scoring lower on the test scores because of the way that people were perceiving them. But an even more frightening thing was that those people who were treating them that way began to believe their own rap and began to bully them, and it was rather frightening. Well, think of the divisions in society that we have, how we treat older people, how we treat minorities, how we treat maybe people with deformities, or whatever it is, those things that we allow to separate us and then to demean others, they hurt us most of all, but they hurt the people that we direct them to, and they hurt society as a whole. Let's turn that around. Let's see ourselves as beings of light. Let's see everybody else as beings of light. And let's act as if we were already, now and forever, in the possession of God. God bless you. Devi's going to talk a little about India.
Thank you. Well, many of us in this room have been to India. It's not a new experience, but I read something a day or two ago. A friend of mine gives me these archaeology magazines, and they were talking about some archaeological dig in Mohenjo-Daro, these very, very ancient, probably the most ancient cities in India, northern India, near the Pakistani border. And there was a quote from a cultural anthropologist that said, India, more than any other country in the world, owes its present reality to the past. And when I read that, something kind of went off in my brain, and I thought, I never quite grasped that, but there's this sense of continuity, of the eternal nature of certain aspects of the culture, the eternal nature of the religions, of the social patterns, and it gives one a sense of timelessness. It gives one a sense that this present reality is just a passing parade, but the true reality of what India is something the eyes cannot see. It's a consciousness of a higher age, perhaps, but certainly a consciousness that far, far precedes the culture that we see going on there today, which is a culture in transition, which is a culture that's confused. And I think it's why Swami felt, on a superconscious level, felt in 2003 to go back to India. Because India it's superficially, it's lost its identity. It's running after the material goodies of the West with everything it's got. And you see a tremendous impact of the West there. Some friends of ours are actually studying Hindi, and some are the Americans who are on the staff there, and some of them, Diana and Dharmaraj, are actually, Daya, Taylor, are getting pretty conversant in it. They don't teach any yet, but they just share and talk and have conversations. And Dharmaraj said, it was interesting, he started he's a Western mother, Indian father, but was raised in America, so he didn't have the language skills. But he said when he first looked at the Indian script, he said, this just looks like gobbledygook. How am I ever going to learn that? But he said he just began copying the letters, copying the shapes of them, and all of a sudden it started coming into his mind. And then he would be reading signs, because he said the Hindi script is very, very phonetic. So he driving around all these big billboards, advertising everything, and he began reading it, and it would say things like Somar Sale, and he said Somar Sale, summer sale, and new videos, and I mean that's what they're doing. And so Swamiji, in his incredible wisdom, said, let's not fight it, let's go with it. So in these huge Western malls that are going up, I mean, since we were there last year, I mean, huge ones have gone up. Just these multi-story, multi-businesses in these Western buildings. And, you know, you see, it's so touching because you see these whole families going, these little grandmas in their saris, all the young generation wear jeans and T-shirts, but the little grandmas. And when we saw it more than a dozen times, you see a little old grandma or a little old grandpa get to the escalator, and they're scared to death. They won't go down it. They stand there, and the kids are saying, come on, Grandma, come on. And no, I can't do this. So they have to take them on the elevator, which they're used to. But so we've started a store, the Wishing Tree, in one of these great big malls. And we sell Swami's books and Master's books and pretty items. And it's doing extremely well. And you walk in there, and there's, you know, you walk in the mall, and it's, you know, all these big billboards for Gucci and, you know, Vidal Sassoon and all these big Western names. And then you go into our store, and I don't know if Dave and Barbara are here today. I think they're visiting ill parents. But there's Barbara Bingham leading the energization exercises, you know, and it's like, wow, we're doing it. And the store is doing very well. And one of the things we're doing is just in the north, we have two bases of operation. Gurgaon, which is an hour or so outside of Delhi in the north, and then our community in Pune, which I'll touch on quickly also. But we're training Indian teachers. We're offering meditation teacher training, levels 1 and 2, yoga teacher training. So right now we have 20 trained Indian teachers in meditation who are teaching in Hindi, which is, you know, even our English, they don't really I mean, they get some of it, but we speak with a different accent than what they're used to. So I think they miss a great deal of what we're saying. But just this ability to say, let's not resist what's happening to India now. Let's go with it. Television and Bollywood and all that. So Swami has television shows once a week. Right now he's recording and has already recorded 50 shows, totally new, on the Bhagavad Gita, which will be on a new TV station in India. He was on 2 other different stations, Asta and Sadhana station. They have stations in India, like we have the shopping station in America. They have stations which are just spiritual discourses. And people watch them. They have a wide viewership. So instead of saying, oh, television, bad, let's get on television. Let's get in the big malls. Bollywood, let's try to see if we can do a movie. And right now we're actually starting to make some contacts to see if we can do a movie, perhaps. I mean, this is still very, very theoretical, but perhaps getting backing from some Bollywood, this is Mumbai is Bollywood, Bombay, producers to do a movie about the life of Master. Swami's written a script called The Way Shower about Master's life. So it's just so thrilling to see what's happening there, because it's like we're riding the wave of modern India, not saying go back to the old ways, go back to the, you know, but saying this is who India is now, but let's remind them, just as Jyotish was saying, you know, we are children of light. India is a land of light. Bharata is the name of India, the land of light. And that's who it is. Swamiji has said India is the guru of the world. And you know, when you go there and the simple devotion of people, you are blessed by them, just the simplest little people. Jumping ahead, then I'll come back. We have a large community meditation group in Noida, which is about an hour outside of Gurgaon, and Jyotish and I went and did a satsang there. And there was this sweet little woman there, her name was Malka. She came here on the pilgrimage some years ago, many of us met her. And when she left here. She's a widow, but just shorter than I am, but just radiant with light, just beaming. And when she left the village, she went to visit her sister in New York. So this was maybe 2005 or 6. And we heard after she left that while visiting her sister in New York, she fell down and broke her arm really badly, shattered it, in fact. She's an elderly woman. And they didn't know if they could repair it. They were telling her that they might have to amputate her arm, which would, nobody wants to have that happen. And so we heard, through others that didn't happen, that they were able to reset it. But when we went to Noida, where she participates in the group there, she came up to us and she said, "Did you hear how my arm healed?" And we said, "No, Malka." And she said, "I was laying in the hospital room in New York, and the next morning I was going into surgery, and they were either going to amputate it or set it. And then she said, Swamiji came into my room, Swami Kriyananda, and he was, of course, here at the village. He wasn't in New York. She said, he came into my room. He did. And he sat on my bed and he stroked my arm and he said, Malka, don't worry. Your arm's going to be just fine. And she said, and the next day I went into surgery. I came out and I woke up and there was my arm. And she showed us, and it's just fine now. So just the simple devotion of people, you just feel like what we have to bring them is just a remembrance of who they are, and just say, don't get confused by what's going on now in India. Remember the depth of devotion. Remember the eternal nature of your great culture, and then bless us with it. And then after a certain time, we traveled down with Swami Kriyananda to our community in Pune, which is in the central southern part of India. And it's where, if you remember, not too long ago, in fact it was a few days before we left, there was a big terrorist attack in the city of Pune, and there was a European bakery called the German Bakery, and I think about 60 people were killed. Well, when we first arrived, we got in late, so we stayed the night in a hotel in the city of Pune, and then we drove out the next day to the property. But after we got in this hotel, one of the attendants said, don't go out tonight because this German bakery that was bombed is just around the corner. We said, okay, we won't go out, don't worry about it. But, so it's that sense of the turmoil, the unrest, the uncertainty, but beneath that, something that doesn't change, and that's the light. So the next day we drove out to the property. We had seen it last year after they had just purchased it, and it was just raw land at this time. And then over the subsequent year, we heard all sorts of, oh, there's no water, oh, there's no this, oh, there, this problem and that problem. And I was uncertain when we got there. What are we going to find? We knew that they'd been working extremely hard, particularly two of our members, Jaya Helene and Biraj Palmer, have really pulled off a miracle. I mean, it's astonishing what they have been able to create. And Jaya and his wife Sadhana Devi will be coming back to America at the beginning of April, and they'll be visiting here at the village from mid-May to mid-June. So do give them all your love and support and reaching out, because I don't think they can ever express what they have been through to create that community against just unbelievable odds, against all odds, really. But when we got there, it felt just like Ananda in the very first summer I came here, 1969. It was pretty raw, but there have been beautiful houses created. Swami Kriyananda's house is just lovely. It's just lovely. And then there's 5 other little kutirs, a house for Dharmadas and Nirmala, for Swamiji's staff, Leela, Miriam, Lakshman. And then Lakshman shares a house, a duplex with Biraj and Lahari, Wayne and Elizabeth Palmer. And then there's another little kutir going up for Ramani, who has been doing the garden. But besides all that, there's a bathhouse, there's a building in construction for the servants, which is part of Indian culture. There's a beautiful vegetable garden with banana trees that are growing and vegetables and water that is being brought in, either brought in tankers, or they have some pumping from a well that's going on. And there's an area where the monks live, a bunch of young men who are living there, very simple. And then one of our members from Italy, Roby Baragozzi, he came over and built a brick pizza oven for the monks. So they're living in these little shacks with a pizza oven. And then there's a tenting area for guests, a very fun thatched roof temple where we gave classes and satsangs and had meditation, just open all around, and you can see off into the distance from it, but just lovely. And that's where the possible site for their permanent temple will be. There's what they call a longhouse, which has a outdoor dining area and a kitchen and little dormitories for guests. So we walked around and we thought, look what they've done. It's really existing, it's real. And it felt again like that, the enthusiasm of youth, where the young, actually it's mainly Jaya and Biraj have done the construction, but this retreat weekend, while we were there, they had the Mahasamadhi. It was the first public retreat they'd had, about 60 guests, and it was just thrilling. It was thrilling to be there because you could see the potential. And so there's this continuity of time, the eternal nature of India, the confusion of the present, and then the future, which is rediscovering of who they are, reintegration of the great culture that exists, and then the bringing of Yogananda's teachings and of his vision of world brotherhood colonies. And Swamiji said something at the Sunday morning satsang of the weekend that maybe he said it before, but I don't know that I've ever really received it in the same way. He was talking about, as he often has done, we've heard him, the imminent hard times that are coming and how difficult it will be. But then he just paused, and it was like this joy was just radiating out of him. And he said, but that's why we've created Ananda, because it will be what exists at the end of all these tests and trials, and it will be the building block for the future. And somehow I've never heard him say it in quite that way. And so it was, you felt like you were getting a glimpse of, as I said, past, present, and future, all in one blessed trip. And Swamiji, when we were leaving, he said, please give my love to everyone. I'm very much looking forward to coming. He'll be here with us, coming to America at the end of June, being at the village July and August for the 4th of July celebrations and Spiritual Renewal Week, probably having at some point a trip down to Los Angeles to do some programs. So we don't mark out those months in your calendar, don't plan trips at those times. And it will be a very, very blessed summer as this thread of light goes around the world, as Ananda's work just is radiant with Master's presence for people really in every country. So God bless you.